There was an announcement made today about new media regulation, new superpower government body set to rule over news and social media content, filming, gaming, classification. So basically at the moment, you'll have heard us say this on this show before, we don't come under any sort of regulatory control doing this because the BSA is the Broadcasting Standards Authority. It's about broadcasting on terrestrial avenues. There's the internet is the Wild West, and we know it's the Wild West. You can pretty much do and say what you want other than breaking the laws of the land. So the government at the moment is going through, I guess, a consultation period, going, you know what, we should probably, I'm now paraphrasing, obviously. I don't know if this is how they'd say it to each other. But you know what, stuff's changed, and we need to relook at if there is regulation needed for other areas of media. Because the laws and the rules that are governing media right now are written for old media, not written for what the new media world basically looks like. So this is some of the things from an article on the Herald. On the face of it, the new government-appointed regulator, which is what they're talking about, has been designed primarily to rein in harmful content on social media platforms such as Facebook. But professional news media organisations would also come under its auspices. The document says, this is the document that's been released today, and remember, it's a working document and it's going out for consultation. This is not law, this is not proposed law, this is the idea, and now they're looking for feedback. The document says traditional media are likely to welcome the move as it levels the playing field by regulating social media, but some media companies aren't pleased. Stuff Chief Executive, well, she was until today, she's just changed her position, Sinead Boucher. We approached Sinead for comment, she didn't get back to us, but Stuff Chief Executive Sinead Boucher said the moves had the potential to, quote, significantly impact independent New Zealand media companies and our journalists. Professional independent New Zealand media companies are already heavily regulated. Further regulation of the news media is wasteful and could impact press freedom. The government's focus should be on regulating the business practices, content and business models of the social platforms which are under-regulated. Yes, they are, Joey. I'm sure that's better now. Regulated business practices, content and business models on the social platforms which are under-regulated, publish enormous volumes of harmful content and are not the subject to already strict laws governing New Zealand media companies and journalists. I'm assuming that sounds better to you now, Chewy. I apologise, my speakers were still on 100%. You still with me? You're looking puzzled.
Yeah. No, I'm still here. I'm mucking around with my settings as well.
I was just making sure that I hadn't disappeared altogether. So this is this regulatory thing. Also, NZME didn't comment because they want to see the document first. RNZ Chief Executive said enhancing freedom of expression and editorial independence and freedom should be central to any reforms. Platforms that would be regulated under the proposed new law are likely to have one of the following, says the document, are expected an audience of 100,000 or more annually, or 25,000 account holders annually in New Zealand. Alternatively, the regulator may designate a platform as a regulated platform if it is unclear whether the threshold has been met or the risk of harm from that platform is significant. So in other words, if it's a counterspin type place and they've got 20,000 account holders and they've got 80,000 or more annual audience, I'm sure they're actually bigger than that, but if they did, then the regulator could designate them significant. Now, I've got lots of questions around this. We're going to have a look at some comment made by the Free Speech Union today, but one of the questions is, how the fuck can a group say, by the way, you are now under our regulation? I was thinking about that. I'm like, okay, so am I allowed to start up an organisation and say, from now on, members of parliament, you're under my regulation, and if you don't, I've got the power to fine you. It's an interesting dynamic.
Just become a sovereign citizen.
Yeah.
That's what that sounds like.
But you know what I mean? It's an interesting dynamic as to how you can come under the regulation of something for things you're already doing and have been doing for a long time, and then it can be changed like that. Now, in general, and we're going to play some comment from the Free Speech Union, who, in my opinion, are out there at the moment basically going, this is the end of the world. This is what's going to happen. And then when you question it, they go, oh no, it doesn't actually say that in the document, but we know what they're trying to do in real life. Now, the Free Speech Union may have some valid points. I mean, you know us, you know me. If I err on the side of free speech or restrictions, I always err towards free speech, but I'm not an absolutist. I know that restrictions on some speech is useful. I've said this as an example before. I would never interview someone who's just written about a book titled "The Way Teenagers Can Easily Kill Themselves." I wouldn't have that conversation with someone, right? I would restrict that speech. So I'm not an absolutist, and the truth is, Chewy, no one is, because even in these clips I'm going to play you hear these guys talking about, free speech, it's not absolute free speech, and then they go, but there's some areas that we think should be restricted. So what they're actually saying is where they think it should be restricted is perhaps different from where a regulator or a government thinks it should be restricted. Anyway, you got some thoughts around this, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that someone's looking at it, because we've come up multiple times with like, wow, you can just say whatever you want, and there, that is good in some cases, but in a lot of cases it's not. I mean, we've had our issues with the platform and how they've gone about with just clear breaches of ethics and just acceptable, understood ways of doing things from a broadcasting point of view.
Yeah.
And someone that has worked in the industry for as long as Plunkett has 100% knows those rules. And then the moment he gets a podcast, he's like, I don't need to do that anymore. I can fully weaponize my asshole.
Well,
and
I mean,
but
one thing, when you talk about those rules, they're not really rules. It's more like, this is the etiquette of being a journalist, like the door stopping thing. Like, there's no law about doxing people. Like, there's no law about it. I can release Chewy's phone number later on in the show. In fact, if you stick around, maybe I will. There's no law about doxing people. It's not illegal to dox someone, to put out their information on the internet. But it's not cricket. There's no law about door stopping someone with an interview, but it's not the way professional journalists operate. So it's also this idea of, regulators or places like the BSA, as toothless as they are, can then kind of go, hey, this is not cricket. This is not how we do it. And I need you to apologize. This new entity does seem to have more teeth than that, though. It talks about fines, although very clearly they say it doesn't talk about imprisonment and that kind of stuff. They also talk about they're not coming after the individual person. So, Chewy, when you want to abuse, a various Auckland mayoralty candidate, they're not going to come after you. But perhaps if a company had a campaign towards someone, they might go after them. So let me play something from the Free Speech Union. Funnily enough, on your favourite podcast, as you keep calling it, today. I'll play the clip first. There's a couple of things I'll offer. So they're talking about this legislation, and what we try and do is bring a balanced look on things. Yeah. Now, I'm concerned about what hate speech laws could be. I'm concerned about restrictions on what free speech could be, but I'm also clear that we should definitely see what it says and work through the system. What the Free Speech Union has come out saying, and they say it in two of these clips, when they basically say, no, it doesn't say that, but we know that's what they mean. They say things like, they're too smart to put in writing what they really mean. So in other words, it's scaremongering, which is hard for me to say it like this because it sounds like I'm sitting on the fence. They may be accurate, they may not be, but it's definitely scaremongering right now. Actually, no, I don't think they're accurate. I don't think any government is setting up to try and squash free speech under the auspice of regulatory issues around keeping people safe on the internet. I don't think that's the case. So let me play this part of this conversation. And in this conversation, Sean Plunkett is looking for evidence that the government is trying to put people in prison for saying nasty things. That he's fishing for that evidence.
Yeah. So they would suggest a new censorship body specifically around the internet, which would have the authority to what? Fine, imprison, compel people to not say certain things on the internet, and who would decide what you could say and couldn't say, according to the discussion document?
Sean, you and I both know they're smart enough to not put any of that in the document.
So in other words, Plunkett said, are they going to imprison people for free speech? The Free Speech Union goes, well, they'd never say that, but... So that's the scaremongering.
So as you read through the document, and my team and I, there are 3 documents. We were reading through the over 100 pages last night, trying to get through the details. What this discussion document is saying, hey, have you seen something that's nasty online? Don't you think that shouldn't be there? Why don't we stop that?
Yeah, he's
That's about it.
But
What
it
this
doesn't
will
say
do,
how we're going to stop that.
so what this will do is it will set up a regulator whose broad aims will be defined by Parliament. And once the regulator is set up, the regulator is the one who will decide what content will
You
be
can't
allowed.
have that.
In which
It's got to be the people that decide, not some bureaucrat. Jonathan, that's ridiculous.
So Plunkett wants the people to decide, right?
people do decide though.
Well, I guess they do through their feet or ears. But the thing that's ridiculous about this position is what legislation in New Zealand, what safety law, whatever, do the people decide? It's not how it works. You know what I mean? It's not how it works. And before you jump into it, I want to show you one more thing. Remember the guy from the Free Speech Union, he said this. He said, it's about, is there something nasty online and do you want it taken off? Well, actually, from the article written about the document, this risky content, because that's what it's about, risky content, content includes age inappropriate material, bullying and harassment, and promotion of self-harming behaviors. Instances of harmful content on mainstream social media sites, such as influencers promoting dangerous disordered eating to teenage girls, have become too common. Mm-hmm. So what the Free Speech Union was saying was like, people are going to see nasty things they don't like and complain about it. It's actually about... Now, I got to be careful here. I'm not actually standing up for this legislation yet. I haven't seen it all yet. But what I'm standing up for is an inaccurate portrayal by the Free Speech Union of what it's about. That's as far as I've got so far. I will figure out my opinion for or against it as we go ahead. But it's not just about, someone being a bit mean to someone else. It's about people advertising suicide. It's about one of the examples they gave was there was a suicide live on TikTok. It's about that. It's not about, he misgendered me, so I'm going to get him banned. It's not about that, according to the document so far. We'll leave it at that, Chewy?
Yeah. No, I'm surprised they didn't mention a slippery slope to fascism or something like that. I mean, in anybody else talking about this, it would be desperately dry balls to talk about it. It's just, there is no regulation for this sort of stuff. Media has moved so fast that legislation cannot keep up.
Yep.
And there is a need for something, as you said, as toothless as the BSA is, there is a need for something similar for modern media. You can jump on TikTok's a great example. You see all manner of lies, hoaxes, terrible advice, hate. And then what are your recourses? I often talk to people about, behaviors online and who do I report this to and that sort of thing. And it's like, you can go and look up some ideas on NetSafe. You can report it to the platform and maybe they'll listen to it.
Yeah.
The platform that it's on, not Sean Plug. So he won't do anything about it. It's probably the one doing it. But yeah, it's, our current legislation is not fit for purpose. And if a government isn't looking at that, then they're not doing their job. And when Sean says, but the people decide, they do by voting for a government. That is what the people decide.
True.
We're not the Swiss model of government where everybody has to do a referendum to do bloody anything.
Yeah.
We're not, doing that sort of thing. You vote for the government and the government makes the decision. You voted for those people. And if you don't like their decision, then there's ways to go about it. You make submissions. You vote the fuckers out. You put someone else in that office.
And you're right. And that's a very, very fair point. I also do think, though, the idea of saying the people decide when it comes to laws, in what universe is this? That the people decide when it comes to laws.
The libertarian one where we're all armed.
But we don't live in that universe.
Fiefdoms.
And so it's the chief censor at the moment who makes something objectionable. In Plunkett's world, that should go to the people to decide whether it's objectionable or not, and then come back. So the Christchurch mosque shootings now have to be seen by everybody, the whole country, to decide whether they're objectionable, to then vote on it to see if it gets classed as objectionable. It's ridiculous. I've got another clip here that I want to play you as well, because this is a part of the conversation where he goes on to talk about, what is free speech and where are the lines. And I always find it hilarious when free speech, there's no such thing as a free speech absolutist. It doesn't exist, because everyone agrees there should be some restrictions on speech, right? Everyone agrees. What the argument is always, where is you think the line versus where do they think is the line? So this is this thing about free speech, that they think that they're selling themselves, all of them, as absolutists, and none of them are. Let me just play you a bit more of this, where the guy from the Free Speech Union is talking about what is and isn't free speech. It's part of this conversation.
Jonathan, it sounds like something that Kate Hanna and the Disinformation Project could have written, this discussion document. Hey, there's a whole lot of nasty stuff out there.
Just listen to how much he's fishing. And actually, you've already heard it when, in the previous conversation, when he was talking about imprisonment, and the guy from the Free Speech Union has to go, no. And he does it again here, looking for, how terribly this has been written. And the guy from the Free Speech Union says, actually, we've been involved with this document so far. Like, the government's been open about it. Free Speech Union has been involved with the process to this point, and he has to admit that.
We must do something about it. There are Nazis everywhere. Is it written, or is it couched in those paranoid terms?
No, it's not.
No.
And credit to some of the team at DIA. We've had the opportunity to meet with them on this project several times. I was actually surprised when I saw the discussion document come out with the tone.
So did you get that? The Free Speech Union has been involved in this process and says that's not how it's written, but they're still distrustful of the document that they've seen and been involved with the conversations around it. Yeah.
That it does, and with the content that it does, because as we've been working with them, they have been acknowledging significantly, and they do in the discussion document as well, the importance of free speech. But it's almost like...
Hang on. So the document's been written with you, well, not with you, but in your consultation, you've been a part of it. They're talking about how important free speech is, and now this is the scaremongering of, but we know what they really mean.
As with so many other people, yeah, I believe in free speech, yeah, it matters, but surely these nasty things should still be removed. That's not...
I mean, those nasty things like live suicides and disordered eating to teenage girls, those nasty things.
Then free speech. And I would say the team there have gone some way in saying that a high...
So, sorry, but just to repeat that, because I talked over it, he was talking about these nasty things, therefore are not free speech. So that's him selling himself as an absolutist.
And they do in the discussion document as well, the importance of free speech. But it's almost like, as with so many other people, yeah, I believe in free speech, yeah, it matters, but surely these nasty things should still be removed. That's not then free speech. And I would say the team there have gone some way in saying that a hyper strict approach by the government, locking people up, isn't on the table. Fine. But we're talking about things like shifting algorithms. So you may be able to post online, but no one will see it. That's still an incredible involvement of an oversight body connected to the state, at least, that is going to have huge implications on the way public discourse is done in New Zealand on really crucial issues.
No, just notice all the absolutes he's saying. This is going to have a huge impact. There is going to be, basically, he's talking about shadow banning. This is a discussion document for people to, but this is the scaremongering. Be afraid, New Zealand, because this is what this Labour government's going to do. This is a discussion document that he's already said talks about the importance of free speech, that doesn't talk about imprisoning people, that they've been involved with conversations right up until now. But remember, fucking Labour, shadows of Jacinda, what are they going to do? It's repugnant. It's repugnant.
Who is this guy? Who's this free speech guy?
He's the head of the FSU. I don't know. His name's Ailing or something. Something Ailing.
Okay.
Jonathan Ailing. So he's the head of the Free Speech Union. But I've got about another 90 seconds of this to play if you can handle it. We'll get to the end of it.
Do you think there is a need for some regulation or rules around what happens on the internet? And I look at...
You ready for this? Do you think so? So Free Speech Union, the answer should be no. And of course, Plunkett's now going to pontificate for about 3 minutes, it's not that long, about how fabulous the platform is. And I've got a response to that.
The platform. The platform, we're not subject to the Broadcasting Standards Authority. We're not a member of the Media Council.
Which is why you can't be in the press gallery. Sorry to tell you that.
We do what we want, but we do it responsibly. And we're also subject to all the criminal codes and civil law codes of New Zealand, which do govern our behaviours. And we do take into account But we don't specifically need anything about what we specifically do because we don't defame people.
Well,
That's
there's
not true.
well, we can't say that's not true. Allegedly, David Farrier might have something to say about that, but we'll keep going. I said might.
And we act with integrity in a commercial sense as well.
Well,
Wow.
It seems to me that we don't need any more rules.
Well, I would say absolutely there should be rules, but as you point out, there are rules.
Why if people behave well?
Because you're a psychopath.
And Sean, when I say that, I'm talking about things like child pornography or terrorist activity.
Yeah. Okay.
And often we see these two conversations dovetail. That's why I want us to note this.
So child pornography and terrorist activity, but there's a very well-known phrase that one person's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Who gets to decide, Jonathan Ailing? Who gets to decide who's a terrorist and who's a freedom fighter? If it's a bureaucrat, why shouldn't the people decide? And that's the lunacy of this whole thing. It's like the Free Speech Union, like, we want restrictions where we deem them necessary, and we want freedom where we deem them necessary.
Who decides what's a crime?
Mm.
Who decides? Like, oh, these goddamn nerds.
Nerds.
It's so glaringly obvious to someone like myself that is very online and uses the internet a lot and is involved in a political commentary podcast. Why is there no regulation? It's crazy. Like, it's crazy. This needs to happen. It's a discussion document. People are obviously giving feedback from various positions. That is how things form. This is just how shit works.
And I'll make it clear again. And I don't know if you're in exactly the same boat as me, Chewy. I assume you probably are. I'm not standing up for this discussion document. I'm not saying it'll be fine. What I am saying is those people who are going, this is the end of the world. New Zealand's going to fall over. As soon as they get asked a question about should there be rules, they go, yep, there should be. What? What? As soon as they go, oh, people are going to go to prison. No, that's not in the document. Oh no, the document speaks lots about free speech. All I'm trying to couch or put out there is this is the beginning of a process, and we will see what happens. I'm not someone who's going to be massively in fan of a lot of restrictions around general speech, but I'm also not stupid enough to go, it needs to be free all the time. What about teenage suicide? Oh, well, not that. What about terrorism? Oh, well, not that. What if a terrorist is a freedom fighter? Well, I don't know how we do that. What about child pornography? Well, not that. I mean, which I actually agree with, obviously. We all do. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, all I'm earmarking is we are going to follow the process on this, and we will keep up with it. We're not going to come out on day one going, they're saying something, but I guarantee you they're really meaning something else.
Slippery slope to putting all citizen journalists in a camp.